Hi everyone. In this tutorial, we're going to take a look at Photoshop. We'll look at what it's used for. We'll take a look at the interface as well as some of the palettes and tools. And we'll go over how to create, edit settings, and saving documents. Alright, let's get started. Photoshop is a digital imaging program that's used by photographers, designers, videographers, and 3D artists. We'll be going over more what photographers and designers use Photoshop for, since that will relate closer to our project. Photographers use Photoshop for correcting exposure or for modifying color on images. They use it to crop and align their photos or rotate them to straighten them out to get better compositions, combining multiple images into composites, and simulating a variety of photographic lens effects. Designers can use Photoshop for creating textures for web and print. They can manipulate type by using different layer styles, creating comps of websites and different mobile app designs, and applying special effects like blurs and different lighting effects. Photoshop is fully integratable with many other Adobe programs. It's really a robust program that can be used for many other things, not just what we covered. Alright, now that we know what Photoshop is used for, let's open up the program, take a look at some of the settings, how to create and save new files, and we'll look at some of the different palettes and tools that we're going to be using. So just like with Illustrator, we can use the Creative Cloud app for opening all our programs. They show up here. Or you can come down to your menu or on the toolbar here, I have it. And if you're using a Mac, just wherever you install it to. So I'm just going to open it up from here. And like with Illustrator, it's going to start us on this page here. If we have recent files used, they're going to show up here. Here we can also hit Create New and open an existing file from here. You can also come up to your top menu here, like with Illustrator, and we'll do File, we have New, Open, and then we can also save from here. So I'll just do Create New from here. That's going to bring up this New Document panel. So just like with Illustrator, when we start a new document, we're going to have some options up top for different templates, and we also have those templates down here. I'm going to be providing you with a template that you'll use for the movie poster, so you don't have to worry about setting this up, but I want you to know how to do it. So you have the different options down here you could select. On the side here, we could change the name of our project. You can adjust the width and height here, and we're going to leave it in inches. You can change the orientation from portrait to landscape. And we can change the resolution here. Normally for print, you want to use 300 resolution. Since that file will be a little big for us to transfer, we're going to go with 150. And we're going to keep it at pixels per inch. For color mode, we're going to do RGB color. RGB works better with Photoshop because a lot of the effects they use need RGB. But afterwards, for print, if you want to print this, you can convert it to CMYK, and then that'll be for print. We're going to leave it at 8-bit, and then the background contents, you can change this if you want, but I'm just going to leave it on white. And then you can just hit Create. Okay, so once you hit Create, it's going to look like this. And our ruler at the top here shows the size of it, and down the side, but you can also go to Image, Image Size, and this will show you your image size here. To save this document, you'll come up to the top here to File, and we'll go to Save As, or you can use Shift-Control-S, and we'll hit Save As to save this. You're going to pick where you want to save it. I'm going to save it to my Art112 save folder. And I already have one in there, so I'll just overwrite it. Since we wrote it in when we created our new document in the options, it's already in there. So we have it saved to test. And then down here, you just have the save as type. So you want to make sure you're saving it as a Photoshop file. Later, when you want to save it out as a JPEG for the critique, this is where you can do it as well. So you could save it out as all of these different image formats, but when you're working on it, you want to have it as a Photoshop file. And then we'll just hit save. And since I have one, I want to replace it. And yes, as you go, I recommend saving often, just in case something happens. If it freezes or crashes, you won't lose too much. And in the side here, you can also go to Open, Control-O, and this is where you can open your project. When you're done working on it, you can either close the entire program, or if you just want to close this composition, you can just close it here. And then it's going to bring you back to this page. To go over the interface and some of the different tools and panels, I'm going to open up the project template. So I'm going to go to Open, and after you save it to where you want it, you can find it here. Be sure to replace your name. I'll do that now. And then You just open it from there. This thing that pops up you can ignore. It's a library that lets you store your objects and layer styles and then use them over different Adobe programs. But we're not going to be using this, so you can just cancel, and I'm going to hit don't show again just so it doesn't pop up anymore, and then hit cancel. Okay, so this is what you're going to see when you first open it. This is the size we'll be using, and we have the credits at the bottom, and you'll be able to adjust different settings in here as well, like the color and the different text in here. Okay, so at the top of Photoshop, and we'll go through all of these in more detail as we need them, but we have our menu up here. So with File, like we went over, you can create new ones, save them, open them. Edit, you have a bunch of different options, but you can do your cutting, copying, pasting in here, and also this is where you'll be manipulating your photos and transforming them. Under Image, we can change the image and the canvas size. We could rotate, we could trim, and this is where we'll do a lot of the color correcting as well. Layers, where you'll be able to create new layers, add adjustment layers, and just adjust the properties of your different layers. Type, you'll be able to adjust all of your properties with your type tool and your text. Select, once we start learning how to select different things, this will let you modify those selections. Under Filter, we have all of our different photo filters, and we'll go over those later. This 3D one we're not going to be using, but there are some settings for 3D layers. Under View, we can do all of our zooming, and we can fit it to the screen if we zoom out. We can also turn off and on our rulers, which are these here. You can turn them off there. And you can adjust your guides. So the guides are similar to what we had in Illustrator. If you just drag and click down, you can bring in guides. And these are really helpful. Under Window, like in Illustrator, we have all of our different panels that you can open from here. And then Help just has the online help that will take you to Adobe's site with some frequently asked questions. Okay, on the left here we have our toolbar, just like in Illustrator. And again, you'll be able to take it off and move it around. And if you click and drag it and bring it to the edge until you see that blue, you can let it go and it's going to dock it back in there. Alright, so you're going to recognize some of these will look similar. We have our pen tool and we have our path selection tool. We're not going to be using those in this project though. Our most important one that we're going to need is this one up here. This is our move tool, and this is what we're going to be using to select anything on here and move them around. You're going to always want to use this one to grab different images, and you can get to it by using the shortcut V. We're going to go through more of these in detail, but at the bottom here you have your colors just like in Illustrator, and you can double click to bring up your color. So in Illustrator we had our fill color and our stroke color. We don't have a stroke color here, we have two fill colors. That just makes it easy to bounce back between two colors. So you can hit it there to go to black and white. I'll just go back here for a second. If you click the one in the back, you can adjust that color. And that's your background color and your foreground color. And you can switch those by hitting that or by using the shortcut key X. This is really helpful when we get into masking because you're going to be using black and white to add and remove from your mask. And so it's easy if you're using a brush to add and remove from your mask just to quickly switch between black and white. So I can remove, then quickly go back in and add. And that'll make more sense to you when we cover masking. Alright, we also have our zoom here. And if you click it, you can just click to zoom in and hold Alt or Option on a Mac to get the minus sign and you'll zoom out. Or just like with Illustrator, and this is what I prefer to do for zooming, if you just hold Alt and use your scroll wheel, you can zoom in and out. And then you can also pan like in Illustrator by holding spacebar and just panning around. So zoom and pan. And then, like in Illustrator as well, if we go to View, Fit on Screen, and that's just going to fit it back into the screen. Alright, I'm just going to hit V to go back to my Move tool. Okay, you'll notice on here when you select a tool that it has properties up here, and each tool has different properties that you can adjust up at the top here. And I'll go through these in more detail as we look at the different tools we'll be using. Okay, on the right side here we have some of the different panels we'll be using. This is our layers panel. This is the one that you'll be using probably the most. And just like with Illustrator, your layers are going to be really important. There's going to be a whole tutorial on layers, but like with Illustrator, you can turn them on and off. You can expand them to see what's nested underneath each layer. Then we have options to create new layers here, and then to create a new group, which is this here, which is a folder full of layers. So it's kind of like creating a layer in Illustrator with the sub-layers underneath it, but you're creating a folder full of layers. And then you can turn that on and off, and it's turning off all of the layers that are nested in there. We'll go into the options down here later, but this is where you can do your color adjustments, your masking, and your different effects. Your color is up here, along with your swatches. Here's an important one here. This is your history. So as you make changes, it's going to add them on here, and if you want to go back, you can do it through here. So for instance, I'm just going to grab my brush, create a new layer. I'm going to switch the color to black. So brush tool. Every time I make a mark on here, it makes a new node in the history here. And if you want, you can just click on that and it's going to go back. And then you can get back to where you were by doing that. So this is a nice visual of just seeing your work, and if you need to go back, you can see exactly where you need to go back to. You can also undo by going up to edit here. So edit, undo brush tool. So the undo only has undo and redo if you do Control Z for that. So Control Z will undo and redo. That's just doing your last move. If you want to go back like you did in here, you do edit, step backwards. So Alt Control Z. And then that just goes and steps back through all of these. So if you want to go back more than just one move, you can do that. And then you can step forward by Shift Control Z. And you can just bring them all back on, or you can do it through your history thing. So if you accidentally close some of these tabs and want to get them back, so let's just close this all up. You can come into your window here and pick them individually, but also if you go to Workspace, right now we're working under Essentials, and they have all of these different workspaces depending on what you're working on. So if you're working on just photography, they have these different things for editing your photos. If you're doing motion, so you could get into animation in here, you can do that, and you're going to get a timeline down at the bottom here. You can do a web one, and this will get you all the properties you need for that. And we're just going to go back to Essentials. So it remembered our settings after we closed everything. So to get that back, we go to Workspace and just reset Essentials. And this is going to reset it. It opened up this library one, and that's what we closed at the very beginning when we opened Photoshop. So if you want, you can just close that. We don't need it. And then it made this a little smaller, so you can just grab and adjust that like that. So you can go through these and adjust them how you want, whatever layout works best for you. And if you find a layout that you like, if you're adding some of these things that you want in here, so if we do libraries, we can add that back. And if you find a layout that you like, you can go up to Window, Workspace, and then do New Workspace, and you'll save that out. So you can just save out your own workspace with all of the settings you want to be using. All right, we'll go into more detail on some of the different tools and panels we'll be using, but I just wanted to show you the interface of Photoshop and some of the tools and panels that we're going to be using. We're going to go into each tool, and we're going to be going into all the tools and everything we're going to go into more depth. We're going to take a more in-depth look at all the different tools we'll be using, but I just wanted to give you a brief look at Photoshop and just an overview of some of the tools and the layout of it. All right, that's going to cover it for this tutorial.